Hello, welcome to White Threads Floss Tube number 19. Today I'm going to be talking to you about Mountmellick Embroidery, and I thought that I would focus in on buttonhole stitch as a focus of the Mountmellick Embroidery, but also because in the previous video that I did I was talking about thread twist, and I mentioned a few stitches that would be affected by either S twist or Z twist thread, and I said that buttonhole was one of them. And there was one particular person who said to me, I don't understand how that works, can you show me? So I thought that I would show you that as well in today's video. So Mountmellick and buttonhole stitch today. So first of all, I thought that I would show you this here. This is a Mountmellick doily. Oh, it's got a thread hanging off it. Let's get rid of that. It's a Mountmellick doily. It has dog roses on it and honeysuckle. And it is in a fairly typical shape that they would use for Mountmellick embroidery. It's got the scalloped edges, and around the edge it has a buttonhole edge and then the knitted fringe. So this buttonhole edge that you can see here is a stepped buttonhole. You can see that it steps in and out and in and out. It's worked quite closely together, and onto that buttonhole at the edge is where the Mountmellick fringe is sewn onto it. Buttonhole is not just used for edging, it's also used as a decorative stitch. So here it's used around the petals of that rose. I don't think it's anywhere else on this one. Oh yes, here it is. It's also worked as a buttonhole wheel here, which has been whipped. So they are the three uses of buttonhole on this doily. This doily is not one that I have on my website at the moment. It's one that I use for classes. I teach it as a class. So if you are interested in me teaching that for your class or your group, please let me know. Obviously, it can't happen anytime soon while we're in lockdown and while we're not allowed to travel. Okay, so this is another Mountmellick project that I have done. It is a lot less typical than other Mountmellick projects because it doesn't have the characteristic knitted fringe. It's a little Biscornu, and you can see that it's quite a small one, but I've managed to pack a lot onto there. It's pomegranates, that's the motif that's used, and they were a favourite motif for Mountmellick stitches. You can see here that I have used buttonhole around the edge of this pomegranate, and it's a padded buttonhole. So it has a line of chain stitch underneath that, and the padded buttonhole, I'll get my words right, is worked over the top of that, and that just raises it up and gives it a bit more height. There are many different ways that you can work buttonhole stitch on Mountmellick. So often it's stepped, or it might be sawtooth, or it might be close together like this, or spaced apart like we saw on the doily. But they use it in many different ways, and that's quite common for Mountmellick. They might take one stitch and use it in 5 different ways, and it's all just part of playing around with stitches. They don't have colour to work with in Mountmellick. They've got pattern and texture, and that's why they use so many different and interesting stitches. And it's really fun to work because there is so much stitch play in this style of embroidery. This is a kit that you can get on my website. It's the Pomegranate Biscornu kit. So now I'll go and do a demonstration for you on the buttonhole stitch and how stitch direction and also thread twist affect it. So the first thing I thought I'd do for you today is explain to you about Mountmellick thread. Mountmellick thread is quite different to other threads that you might use for embroidery. For starters, it's quite thick. It's about the same thickness as a 4-ply knitting cotton. I'll put this over it so you can see how thick it is compared to inch markings. And here, if you look on this side, it's about 1 millimetre thick. So it's quite a thick thread. It also has it's made up of a number of very fine ply. I'll spread this out for you so you can see. There are, no, it's not really helping you. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 ply that make up that thread. So it's quite thick. It has absolutely no shine, which is really important in Mountmellick embroidery. So So I'm going to bring my needle out on the top line, and I am going to work this towards the left. Now I could do this with my right hand if I wanted to, but I am left-handed and I'm going to be working this as a stabbing motion, so you can change over and use it in your right hand if that is your preferred handedness. So moving just a little bit to the left, I'm going to insert it on the bottom line and then bring it out just to the left of where I came out the first time on the top line. And I'm going to come out through the loop. Now you can see the first thing about this thread, it tends to knot up terribly. Okay, so I'll go back in at the bottom line again and come out just next to that on the top line, once again coming out in the great big loop and pull it through. Now what you'll see is that those stitches aren't sitting up straight, they're sort of leaning over to the side a bit, and that's because this is such a thick thread that when you come out at the top here, it pushes the buttonhole section over and makes it look like it's sitting on an angle. So to stop that from happening, what you need to do when you're working with a thread that's this thick is to insert your needle slightly back towards the direction you've come from. Now I'm doing this in a stabbed method, so what I'm doing is just bringing my needle out to the right of where you would think it should be, which is the same as, hang on, I'll just get rid of that, as inserting your needle in a direction like that. And this time you can see that the stitch sits up much straighter. So you're just using a slightly angled needle to make your stitches sit up straight. You can see that's much better. Now with this sort of buttonhole, you don't need to be really close together. What you need is for the edge of the fabric to hold. So this is the buttonhole that we would put around the edge of our piece, and then we would cut away from the edge of that, and so all you need is to stop it from fraying. So it doesn't need to be crammed in totally tight, it just needs to be reasonably tight. Okay, so this is what I would say is the best direction for doing your buttonhole stitch in terms of getting the thread twist to work with you and not against you. And I've got another massive knot on the back. What a pain. Oh yeah, that's really good. I'm going to stop the camera and figure that out. So I've sorted out my knot and now I can keep going. So I'll just do a little bit more, and then what I'm going to do is change my stitching direction. Oh, what I was also going to say is I'm working this away from me. A lot of people prefer to turn it 90 degrees and work towards them so that the needle is inserting that way. And that's absolutely fine. I have no problem with you doing that. You would just turn this 180 degrees. And if I can work out how to do a little bit of trickery, I will turn this around for you in the video so that you can see. So I'm going to finish that off there. And now I will work in the opposite direction. So I'm going to come up over here and work back in that direction. What this is going to do is pretty much the same as if I flipped over to using a Z twist thread. This is an S twist thread. Mountmellick thread is an S twist thread. So this will have the same effect as changing my thread twist. And the place that we're going to see the difference is at the top of the stitching where you've got that, what I call the rolled edge, this bit up here. Now this isn't a huge difference, but it does make a difference, and that's why I wanted to show it to you today. Possibly you've never noticed the difference because it is quite a small difference, but nonetheless it does make a difference. So you can see that I'm just changed the direction. I'm stitching from left to right now instead of right to left, and the difference that you'll be seeing is at the top of the stitches. So just do a little bit more. I'm actually getting them to they're falling over a little bit this time. I do apologise for that. I haven't bothered to compensate and angle my needle. You can also see here one of the painful things about this thread. When you've got so many ply, it can split and untwist quite easily. Okay, so we've got our two different directions of stitching. This one, the edge of it looks like a stem stitch. That's the way the thread twists as it intertwines. This one here looks like an outline stitch, and that's because of the way the thread twists and intertwines. So that is the difference, and you can see it's minimal, but it's the same difference as you would get from a stem stitch and an outline stitch. Now what I'm going to do also to illustrate this is now swap over and use a Z-twist thread and show you the same thing again. My Z-twist thread is not going to be white, so it is going to look different, obviously, because Mountmellick thread does not come in Z-twist. So I'll swap over now and show you again. Okay, so the thread that I'm using this time is a Cascade House Pearl 12 in silk. It is a Z-twist thread. So I'm going to do the same as what I did with the Mountmellick thread, which was an S-twist. This is obviously a lot finer, and therefore it's not going to look the same, but hopefully we will be able to see well enough the difference between the two rolled edges. So I am doing buttonhole from right to left along a line with the rolled edge away from me, this time with a Z-twist thread. As you can see, it's much finer, so I'm going to have to do quite a bit more stitching to reach the same distance as I did with the other one, so I probably won't even go as far. All I need is for you to be able to see the difference with the rolled edges. I'll say once again, I am stitching this with my left hand because I am left-handed. You could quite easily change over to your right hand and do the same thing, because I'm stab stitching, so really it doesn't make very much difference at all. And in terms of stitch direction, well, I'm going both ways, like I'm going right to the left for this one, but I'll go left to right for the next one, so, you know. It's much of a muchness. However, you could turn the whole thing around and work at 180 degrees if you wanted to. That'll do it for that. You can see that's falling over. It looks terrible. Anyway, that'll do. All I need is to illustrate my point. So I'm now starting at the other end and I'm coming back towards the center. Sorry about the light changing here. The sun keeps going behind the cloud. So this time I'm starting at the left end and going towards the right end. So this one equates to that one, and this here will equate to that one there. Oops, we don't need a knot with this one as well. Go away knot, thank you. And more knots. Oh dear, what's going on? I'll just turn off the camera and fix it. Okay, my knot's gone now, so back to stitching. Now I do know that some people find it extremely difficult to change their stitch direction when they're doing buttonhole stitch. The idea of changing from right to left or left to right to the opposite direction is far beyond some people's brains, so I do apologise for that, but at least you can see here what the difference makes, because I'm doing it for you. Okay, so this is probably enough. Alright, so what we have here we have S-twist thread, here we have Z-twist thread. I apologise that they look quite different. I don't have very much Z-twist thread to use. This here is Mountmellick thread number 3. It's approximately the same thickness as a 4-ply knitting cotton. This is Cascade House number 12 Pearl in silk. This is 100% cotton. Okay, so here we have buttonhole stitch worked from right to left, and the edge here is like a stem stitch. Here we have it worked from left to right, and the edge here is like an outline stitch in S-twist thread. Down the bottom here we have an S-twist thread worked from right to left, and the rolled edge here is like the outline stitch with S-twist thread, but this is how a stem stitch looks in a Z-twist thread. Here we have the Z-twist thread worked left to right in buttonhole stitch, and the top of the buttonhole looks like a stem stitch with the S-twist, but this is how an outline stitch looks in Z-twist thread. I hope that's clear for you. As you can see, it's not a massive amount of difference, but it does make a difference. And this is the look that I prefer when I'm stitching, but you could just as easily prefer that method and do it that way. It's up to you. It's the effect you want that's the important thing. So I hope that was helpful to you, understanding how buttonhole stitch is used in Mountmellick embroidery and the difference that thread twist and stitch direction can make to it. We have a full range of Mountmellick embroidery supplies, including thread and fabric. We've got cotton, satin, jean in 2 different weights, and we've got 3 different weights of the Mountmellick thread. We also have the knitting cotton, and we have needles to do the embroidery with. We've also got embroidery hoops as well, which is very important for when you're working Mountmellick embroidery. If there's anything else that I can help you with about Mountmellick embroidery, please ask me. And while you're here, I'd love it if you would subscribe to the White Threads Floss Tube channel. Thanks very much for joining me again today, and I'll see you next time.